Okay, hello everyone. And today we are going to discuss HIPAA. If you're like me, I have always thought that HIPAA is spelled with two P's, but HIPAA actually has two A's. And HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So, what is HIPAA? HIPAA is a federal law that governs the way covered entities handle the privacy and security of patients' protected health information with the acronym PHI. HIPAA covered entities include healthcare providers and health plans. So, what is protected health information? This includes information about an individual in any form, including electronic, hard copy, such as paper, films, and even oral information that was created or received by a healthcare provider, health plan, or employer, and that identifies the individual or that can be used to identify the individual. This can also be found stored on a computer, server, or cloud, which we'll get into what is ePHI, protected health information. That is the electronic form, and it is sometimes referred to as ePHI, EFI. The EFI can include patient information in an email or stored on a CD or a memory stick. It's electronic. So when is patient info not protected health information? So that is when it needs to be de-identified. That means it's not going to be connected or be able to be traced back to an individual. And to de-identify protected health information, there are 18 identifiers that have to be removed. So let's take a look at what those 18 identifiers are. Names, definitely no names. Locations, including addresses, cities, counties, precincts, and zip codes. Dates, except for the year, but this includes the date of birth. Admission, discharge date if you're working in a medical facility, date of death, and all ages over 89, or information that would indicate age over 89. It would be telephone numbers, fax numbers, email addresses, social security numbers, medical record numbers, health plan beneficiary numbers, account numbers, certificate license number, vehicle identifier and serial numbers, including license plate numbers, device identifiers and serial numbers, web universal resource locators, URLs, internet protocol IP address numbers. So some of these may be more obvious than others. Biometric identifiers, including finger and voice prints, full face photographic images or any comparable images, and any other unique identifying number, characteristic, or code, unless the key is not disclosed. So there's a lot of things that need to be removed before information is safe to share. So what happens if there's a violation? HIPAA violation penalties. So that means when there's a breach in HIPAA, information is brought out into the open that should have remained locked away. So that's when the federal government imposes strict penalties on individuals or entities that violate HIPAA. There's civil monetary penalties can range from $100 to over $50,000 for each violation. Unknowing and wrongful disclosure of personal health information can also result in criminal penalties that include fines and imprisonment. Whether it is intentional or unintentional, you cannot say, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. You cannot share information. Personal liability. So Congress recently made it clear that penalties apply to any person who obtains or discloses individually identifiable health information in violation of HIPAA. You can't be working in an office and say, oh, I know that my neighbor goes here. I'm just going to take a look at her chart and see how that looks. That is a violation of HIPAA. If you are not directly in on that patient care, you cannot just pull up people's health information to view it. In 2009, Congress also enacted new laws that increased penalties for HIPAA violation and the step up HIPAA enforcement. Compliance tips, records. Let's talk about how we remain in compliance within our clinic. You're going to be seeing patients, you're creating charts, you're putting a lot of personal information together. So these are a few things that we need to remember. Do not bring records home. They always remain in the clinical area. They are not to be stored in the locker room. You do not bring them outside of clinic. You do not leave patient information in the label maker. If you're writing labels to put on the patient's chart, you always want to delete their name. Medical history. We will be dealing with a lot of medical histories throughout clinic. You may bring it to your patient's home and give them the medical history. They can mail it right back directly to the clinic. If they ask you to bring it back, it needs to be brought back sealed in an envelope, and you give it right to the front desk. We do not review any medical histories in the reception area. If a patient has sensitive medical information, wait until they present in the clinic for their medical history completion. You may be wondering, what is sensitive medical information? And it can be anything. It's anything that the patient does not want to disclose at that time. We will then have that discussion when they come into the clinic. Computers. Never leave a clinic computer with patient information unattached. You do not want to get up from your workstation, bring your patient in to be seated, and have your entire schedule up there on the computer. You don't want that patient to see every single name of the patients that are coming into the clinic today. Never leave the appointment book visible when your patient is even seated in the chair. That should be minimized. You should only have their chart available up on the screen. Social media. Do not comment on social media about a family member's friend, upcoming or previous appointment. Just don't do it. Don't put anything on social media about who you're seeing, what their treatment is. Don't take selfies. Do not post pictures, patient information. Do not comment about patients on social media, even in closed groups. Deleting information from social media is still considered a breach because nothing is ever actually deleted from social media. It is stored somewhere. We like to say in the clinic, when in doubt, leave it out. So if there is anything that you are unsure of, leave it out. Photography. I'm not sure I understand. Do not take pictures of patients in the clinic setting. Again, this goes back to don't take selfies. Do not take pictures of radiographs and/or text, email, post these images to social media. Even in closed groups, because that's another thing, there's really never any closed groups. Covering patient's name is still considered a breach. So let's remember that as well when we're in private practice, because you will see on social media that people will post x-rays and they'll take out the patient's name. That's still considered a breach. Just don't do it. Don't get involved in it. Don't post anything. Don't put yourself at risk. Cell phones. Do not charge your phone at a computer station. That if you plug it into the computer station, it can transfer information. It's just, we're not going to risk that. You also want to turn off your voice recognition software. If you have Siri on your phone or Google Voice, they are always listening. We ask that that is turned off when you come into clinic. If your patient has to take a phone call, we ask that they leave the clinical areas when they're on their phone. There's a lot of conversation happening, patient information, they may be able to hear something in the background. When in doubt, leave it out. Again, if you have any questions, you can always check with clinical faculty, but when in doubt, leave it out. At the end of this now, you're going to be taking a 10-question quiz. If you have any questions, any concerns, feel free to reach out.